Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Realm of Unknown. I apologize for this being a little bit delayed again. God, I've been so horrible with my schedule lately, and I don't know, work stuff is kind of a bit of a transition, and I'm currently in the motions of moving back home because yay, college loan debts, and my lease is also ending soon, so yeah. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I have been hard at work getting some episodes prepared for you guys, and one in particular is the one that we're going to be talking about today. It is actually a topic that I talked about on one of my previous YouTube channel episodes, and I've been sprinkling hints about this one over on Twitter if you follow me there. And I just did a bunch of research for this. I don't know if it's perfect or not. It's sort of similar to when I did, I'm blanking on the location, Bobby Mackey's. When I did the research for that and how I structured it is sort of how I went about this one. And that's a lot of sort of just background history and then going into the specific claims and certain reports and sightings and just weird goings on in the location. And then just sort of sprinkling in my own little insight based off of stuff I looked at and stuff I've seen. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm not perfect at this by any means. And I apologize for any audio quality in the background because, again, right now I am in a transitional period. And that involves me having to record in very, very odd spaces. Right now, I'm in like a blanket fort in my closet, so yeah, it's not ideal, but we'll see. Perhaps I'll have some more time and space when I'm back home and I have a little bit more lenience with it. So, without a further ado, I guess I should just get into this topic. I don't really have any more announcements for you guys, and I don't want to keep you guys waiting any longer than you already have. So, today's episode and today's topic that we're going to be talking about is none other than the BridgeWater Triangle. So, similar to other spots that I'm going to be talking about in the future, the BridgeWater Triangle is sort of just like a hodgepodge of everything. And I think it's probably not this particularly, but it's definitely my sort of subcategory of favorites when it comes to the paranormal and all that stuff. Just places that just have so much weird stuff going on that you just have to like compile a list. You can't just look at it once and know everything about it. And that's what this location 100% is. So I am going to be talking about a little bit of the backstory and giving you guys a bit of context on the location. And then I'm going to be talking about some of the specific like parts and weird sightings that people see and report. And then from there, I'm gonna, it's weird towards the end. But let me start. So a very brief history, if anyone who does not know or anyone who's not in the location of this spot. The location in question of the BridgeWater Triangle is relatively about 200 square miles, roughly 520 square kilometers for anyone not in the U.S. or the two other countries in the world that, And it's located in the southeastern portion of Massachusetts here in the U.S. And it's essentially one of the Northeast's equivalent to the phenomena which is more notorious, being the Bermuda Triangle. So if you need any point of reference for what we're going to be talking about in a way, look up, or I mean, if you should, I don't know if you have to look it up, but if you know what the Bermuda Triangle is, you should have a relative grasp on what the BridgeWater Triangle is. So the BridgeWater Triangle, again, it's in Massachusetts. And the triangle itself refers to the enclosed area from three distinct points in Massachusetts being towns of the state, and that is being Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown. Those 3 points are the points that create the boundaries of this triangle and are also the points that encompass all of these weird paranormal goings on. Not all of them. Some of them are outdoors of the border itself, but for a good portion of the things that I'm going to be talking about, it takes place with either in these towns or within the area, like enclosed within them. Okay, so a lot like other locations across the globe, with these weird phenomenons going on. Like I mentioned, the Bermuda Triangle is a good example. I believe there's one off the coast of Japan. I could be wrong. I think it's called like the Dragon's Triangle or something, or the Devil's Triangle. And I believe there's one up in Vermont too, but I could be wrong on that as well. But there's a lot of these locations around the globe, and the BridgeWater Triangle is absolutely no exception when it comes to the alleged paranormal phenomena that happened there. So what could you see here is a pretty long list. You've got UFO sightings, strange mysterious creatures, weird like cult activity potentially, and it's just a long list. So these events and sightings were officially gathered and collected and given a voice and a specific boundary and name. The name BridgeWater Triangle, it was all coined by a cryptozoologist named Loren Coleman. Now, some reports have him as a cryptozoologist, but others just have him as like a paranormal investigator, and I guess he has a lot of titles. I just wrote cryptozoologist because within his book Mysterious America is where he outlined all these things. And again, he is the one who coined this specific boundaries and gave it the name BridgeWater Triangle. Again, there's other things that stretch over the border, but this guy kind of set the definitive, what we know it as today type boundaries. So into the backstory of the location, I tried my best, so bear with me, and definitely bear with me when it comes to pronouncing any of these names, because I'm not an expert, and I'm not from the Boston area, so I won't know all of them, and I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to Native American pronunciation, so I will try my best. So like many areas along the... Oh, again, I'm reading off a script, so I know, I apologize for it being weird. A lot of locations across the east coast of the United States, the BridgeWater Triangle has a really rich history to it, especially since it's really close to Boston, like I mentioned. It's roughly a half hour south from the major city, and it draws upon its history dating all the way back to colonial era settlements, and a lot of stories that we'll be talking about, and a lot of legends that we'll be talking about, even further back than that, going into a lot of native tribes and the regional legends that they have surrounding the area. So with that, I'm going to go into some of the profound locations and landmarks that are provided within this general location that just have an interesting history and have some ties into the later reports and stories that we're going to be talking about. Because again, this is a pretty big area, so there's some distinct points that I just want to mention to give you some context. So first and foremost, located in the center of the triangle and taking up a pretty big portion of the region, sits Hockomock Swamp, and I could be pronouncing that wrong, so I apologize. Used by the Wampanoag Indian tribe for several generations before European colonists eventually arrived to the location. Dating even further back than them, some indigenous people have lived in the area, as artifacts and human settlements have been discovered dating way back like 10,000 years ago. So people have been in this region for a pretty good time. Starting around 300 AD and going up into colonial times, native tribes depended on the swamp as a source of just everything. They hunted here, they had a lot of bounty there, and it was a very big woodland area, along with making the swamp a very sacred ground. Though there's a lot of reference to worship and sort of fear within their religion to the swamp itself. The Wampanoags, again, both worshipped and feared this region as their chief deity of death and disease, called Hobunmock. Gosh, I'm sorry if anyone... I'm not an expert on this. This deity is said to dwell within the swamp, and the tribe called the swamp the name Hockomock, which means place where spirits dwell. This could be completely wrong. Believe me, when I try my best when it comes to research, but especially when it comes to Native American stuff, based off my experience and know-how when it comes to this, a lot of people seem to get it wrong, and I'm just trying my best to recap things. So if anyone has questions, I will have like link notes to things that I've referenced for this information. So if you have any corrections, you can let me know. Hakmak meaning place where spirits dwell. Okay. And eventually, when early English colonists began to settle in the area, they too were referring to the swamp by another name, the Devil's Swamp. So in the 17th century, moving up a bit in time here, the swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag Indians during the invasion by early English settlers during the King Philip War. Now it's going to get confusing, so let me try my best to work this out here. During this war, the swamp itself became a strategic base of operations for Chief Metacomet. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who used the region to initiate attacks against English settlements. So a little side note here: this Chief Metacomet, is also King Philip. So I know it's confusing. So this guy, he has his birth name, but then he also adopted an English name, and his English name was King Philip. I don't know why he chose that 100%, but he adopted an English name, and that's what the war's called. I don't know why they don't just call it by its actual name. It's confusing because you think, oh, English, Philip, okay. But yeah, so whenever I mention King Philip, I'm talking about this Wampanoag chief. So if anyone's confused, that's who I'm talking about. So they used the region to initiate attacks against English settlements. Later on, during the 18th and 19th century, Euro-American settlers ultimately considered the swamp to be rather like waste of space, simple terms, and they attempted to drain part of the swamp in order to create farmlands. Think sort of like DC area type stuff, where they wanted to expand the region and really utilize it for more settlement. But you can't really use a swamp, so they attempted to drain it. Not a whole lot of progress was made there. So moving on, for the next distinct landmark within the triangle itself, we have the Freetown Fall River State Park. This again takes up a pretty decent portion of space, and within this park, there is a specific rock known only as Profile Rock, which stands tall amongst the trees within the forest. It's a natural granite formation that has many foreseers believing that it resembles that of a human face looking out over the woods. I can kind of see it. I'll be posting some photos of this location, so if you want to put your own opinions. I don't really see the face. I can get what they're trying to say, but I don't see it. A lot of locals claim that natives of the region believed the face to be that of the previous chief that we mentioned's father, being that of Chief Massasoit, again being King Philip's father. At this point, King Philip, they believe he died at this location as well. And the father of this chief, who was rather friendly with new English settlers. So he has some pretty good history to the location. And as of today, though, however, the location is pretty much littered with graffiti, and it's kind of just like a hangout spot for local youths and adolescents and just people who just want to explore the region at night and stuff like that. So it's kind of defaced, which is kind of sad because, again, it's supposed to be a relatively worshipped spot and sacred in some ways. But if you travel just a few miles away from this rock, it's another rock called the Solitude Rock. It's a lot out there. It's also known by the Solitude Stone. So this stone is special due to being covered with a 1.5-century-old inscription. So these inscriptions are believed to be carved by the Reverend Timothy Otis Payne of the New Church of Jerusalem. Gosh, titles. A Christian sect founded in the principles of the occultist Emanuel Swedenborg. I looked it up. That's how you pronounce it. It's just Sweden and then Berg. Whose philosophies were said to have helped play a role in inspiring Freemasonry. So, again, a lot of history dating far back. In his I just blanked on where I am. In his doctrine of correspondence, Swedenborg asserted that the physical world was the result of spiritual causes, and that the laws of nature reflected that of the spiritual laws. So it's tried to look this up. I don't believe it's like a cult in like the sense of like, you know, they're sacrificing everyone, all this crazy stuff. When I mean a cult, I just mean like arcane, like very spiritual, very in tuned with stuff. I mean like that. And again, this is dating back further, so their version of things are kind of weird already. They're dated, obviously. So bear with me. But they don't really come into this whole stuff a lot. They literally just pertain to this stone. It is weird. I again will be posting photos of this stone. There aren't, from what I can understand, too many weird stories with it. However, the inscriptions themselves have a weird poem and stuff. But it gets more interesting because there is another stone, just rolling down a list of stones, that is like way crazier. So this one, this much more mysterious spot and stone is known as Dighton Rock. I hope I'm pronouncing that right because, again, I talked about this on my YouTube channel. People went crazy. They're like, you pronounced it wrong. This thing you've never been to or known about or location. Oh, you pronounced it wrong. And I'm just sitting here. I'm like, I don't get crazy upset when people pronounce Schuylkill wrong in Philadelphia. Okay, so back off for a moment. I tried to look it up. I believe it's pronounced Dighton. I think I pronounced it Dayton last time. So it's Dighton, like Dighen, but it's spelled like bright with a D and then on. So yeah, bear with me. Dighton Rock. So someone or a group of people with some weird unknown origin are related to this rock. Again, it's a mysterious thing. So what is it? The rock itself has a bunch of figures of people and animals and symbols carved all over it. And the rock is not like a rock. It is a big boulder. Like it's the size of like a Volkswagen. It's a big thing. But no one really seems to know, I should say, who created this thing. Like it wasn't really in plain sight. They had to move it up from a river at one point. And it's just such a weird thing to have with like no context to it. So the origin and meaning of the markings themselves have been the subject of debate for centuries since it's been discovered. And a lot of theorists have been divided on who or what group or what people are responsible for the petroglyphs. Some people think that ancient Native American tribes were held responsible. Others think Phoenicians, Norse travelers who came here early on in history. People think even colonial Portuguese and stuff. And some people even think that like medieval Chinese sailors somehow came here way back and just carve this. So all of these groups have been considered. No one has any solid evidence on like which one. A lot of the symbols resemble different languages and different tribes, so it's kind of like a mishmash. So again, no one really knows what's going on. But in the 1950s, the stone again was removed from the river that it's been settled in and deposited off onto like the shore area. And there's actually a museum on the location at this point, just kind of built up around it. And you can go there. You can just go there and have tours, and they'll talk about the history and the theories and all this stuff. And I would love to go there. It looks like fun. But it's all volunteer work, and it's all locals. So if you want to go there and you want to support the region, have at it. Go explore this museum. And that's it for the background. It's a little short, I know, but bear with me. It's only because there's a crazy amount of stuff on here. The last time I did like an open outdoors location spot with a lot of history and reports was back in, I believe, this fourth episode? Whatever Clinton Road was. I believe Clinton Road was the third episode. And I kind of went back and forth between different reports and background history. And I think I focused a little too much on the physical location of itself. And I did talk about like the weird goings on, but I felt like I kind of wanted to talk about it more because I found that more interesting. Avi, because it's, I'm a paranormal thing right now and you guys came here for the weird stuff. So I wanted to just give some more time and some more energy into the paranormal claims. And there are a lot, to the point in which I had to like separate like my categories into subcategories. So first we're going to be talking about the ghosts and the weird paranormal stuff. And then we're going to move on into the like cryptid slash like physical like creature type things. And then we're going to talk about UFOs because there are aliens here apparently. And then finally we're going to just talk about weird stuff that potentially have a lot of like real life possibilities. So that's how I'm wrapping this up. Explainer finished. Let's talk about this. So first off, talking about the ghost and everything fun and exciting in that regard, we have within this forest and within all these weird several spooky places that can be seen, there's a lot of really dark and like kind of creepy presences that people are reporting. But the most infamous spot for this sort of activity, like this more evil presence, this more looming essence when you're there, is a 80-foot deep rock quarry, which is known as Ascent Ridge, or in other words, just called the Ledge. It's a scar that's been left on the landscape due to the Fall River Granite Company back in the 1800s. And people who visit this location, who come there up onto the ridge, have often spoke of being compelled and just like having this overwhelming fear, or not this fear, this overwhelming urge and like desire to just throw themselves off the ledge. Like they just jump off. Allegedly, there have been people that have done this. I didn't really deep dive too much into this because I feel like even if I did look into it, it would have been a lot of like, it wouldn't have been very solid, I feel like, in a lot of sense, a lot of solid evidence to provide things. But apparently within this legend, people have jumped to their deaths, so keep that in mind. Others who have visited the location have talked about having a feeling or sense of just dread in general when going up to the ledge or just being near it. And visitors have also reported seeing ghosts up and along the cliffs, and the cliffs themselves are apparently a hotspot for a lot of Satanists and strange occult activity, as well as several UFO sightings. So this ledge is like one of the crazy like mishmash hotspots, the place you like don't really want to go on your own. I wouldn't. I would go there with like a group maybe in the daytime. I don't want to run into an occultist and jump off and hit the UFO on my way down. So moving on, let's backtrack a little bit and we'll talk about Profile Rock, the second thing we talked about in the backstory region. The one that sort of resembles the face of the Wampanoag chief Massaset, I believe his name was Massaset. I'll write it down somewhere for you guys to see. So I'll just call it Profile Rock. Profile Rock has been experiencing a lot of paranormal reports itself. Once again, the location is believed to be very sacred to the Wampanoag people of the region. Again, because it resembles the image of one of their chiefs, while also being a place in which that chief's son eventually died. So it just has a lot of history to the region and to the people. Again, it's sacred. Local legends say that Native American ghosts can be seen dancing around and often wearing warrior garb. They're dancing around the rock in what people believe to be some sort of like ceremonial dance. Again, these are kind of like ghostly figures, so a lot of these reports are kind of blurred in a lot of ways. But for the most part, people assume or believe that these are spirits that are dancing. Another spirit is also seen, a spirit of a man, has been seen and sighted sitting up on top of the rock with his arms outstretched forward. He's just kind of sitting there crisscross applesauce with his arms reaching out over the horizon, just I guess looming above you, because it's a tall rock. I would not want to see that when I walk in the night. Others have also reported having seen very strange glowing orbs of light that have been seen around the rock's location in general, along with a lot of people that are kind of like walking around the region, so stepping a little bit away from the rock. People report hearing disembodied voices, potentially, this is me speculating here, potentially I'm assuming linking back to the dancing native spirits, maybe? I don't know. I mean, if they're dancing, if it is like a ritual type thing, or if it is a ceremonial thing, I'm assuming that it's going to make noise or dancing, and it might even be accompanied with music. I don't know. There's no real reports of music being played, but I don't know, maybe chanting. I'm trying to give an explanation as to why people might hear voices and also see dancing things, so I don't know. Similar to the themes and sightings from this rock, we'll take a step back. There's actually another rock within BridgeWater Triangle. It's not as big as like the other spots that we talked about, so I saved it for just the paranormal section of this talking. And this one's called Anawan Rock. It's named after Chief Anawan, I might be pronouncing that wrong, who surrendered at the location to the colonists, essentially kind of being like the marking point for the end of the King Philip War. So during that whole crazy stuff. Legend has it that there are sightings of angry spirits of Indian warriors that continue to haunt the location, starting spectral fires, just doing crazy stuff, while apparitions have also been seen dancing around this location as well, again linking it back to Profile Rock. So both locations in a sense are sacred. Both locations have a lot of history to it, so it's reasonable to believe that the ancient natives of this location have ties there, I guess, in the spirit realm. So, okay, I'm just scrolling on. I'm reading off my laptop, so bear with me here. Usually I print my stuff out for these big things, but I have 9 pages of written stuff on my laptop, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to read, I got my glasses on. But I think it's slowing down my response time, so we'll see how it goes. Actually, how long are we in? Oh, we're about like a half hour. Okay, that's pretty good. I always think I'm talking way faster than I am. I also think I'm talking a lot louder than I am, but my voice comes across very monotone, so I guess we're there. But enough with my own struggles and weird mishaps. That's only for the beginning and end of the episode. So moving along, getting back to what you guys actually want to listen to. All throughout the BridgeWater Triangle, paranormal reports have also been made by locals and visitors and just hikers alike. Mysterious glowing eyes of unseen creatures and beings that are just kind of lurking in the darkness have been reported, along with glowing lights and sighting that sort of hover around the tree lines. Sort of think like a wisp type thing. It's all disembodied type stuff. Again, Native American ghosts and spirits have also been seen here. In this particular instance, Native American ghosts have been seen paddling up and down the rivers within canoes. So that's interesting. I guess they have spectral canoes. That's the first time I've heard about that sort of stuff in a location before, so pretty cool. They're seen in most of the forest's waterways. So I just wrote rivers. I'm assuming there's ponds and lakes. I believe there's one lake. But there was no particular specification when it came to that. They just said water areas. Oh god, I forgot how long the ghost section was. Okay, so this one's a doozy, and I'm gonna mention a note at the end when I finish this one. So one of the more, I guess, infamous ghostly legends that come out of the Triangle is the story of is the story of a couple who was driving up along Route 44 back in October of 1984 when their car broke down. So they pulled up alongside the road, and the husband of the pair, or I guess the man, walked up the road on his way to locate a payphone, and he stumbled into what he believed was a stranger, just like a hitchhiker walking along the road. It specified that he had red hair, so okay. And again, so he believed this is a hitchhiker. He just kind of happened upon this man, and the man who was looking for the payphone asked the stranger for help, assuming maybe he might be a local. But the stranger just kind of remained silent, kind of ignored him, And upon asking the question another time, the man then noticed that the stranger's face was contorted and like warped and like just ghoulish and like just kind of falling apart. So out of fear, the man ran back to his car to tell his wife what happened. But little did he know that his wife was standing outside of the car waiting for him with like a look of just fear and terror on her face. And he asked her like, what is wrong? What's going on? Why are you out of the car? And she stated that while she was sitting in the car, she had turned on the radio and heard a deranged laughter and taunting voice calling out her name. Which, I don't know how real this is, but I'm just like thinking in my head, I'm like, if I'm in a car and my significant other or whoever I'm with got out after we're in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, I don't know if this is nighttime, the story doesn't specify. If you just turn on the radio and you just hear like a maniacal, like Joker-esque laugh and like repeating your name and taunting you, oh my god. Because I'll talk about it. Hold on. So let me finish this up real quick and then I'll talk about why I can kind of understand this in a way. So that's the end of the story, but there is a note that I wanted to mention that I said before. This is again a story. So there are lots of reports and lots of versions when it comes to this red-headed hitchhiker. Some have it being a stranger. Some have this spirit being someone that, you know, people ask like, hey, do you need a ride? And he says yes. And then he like is about to get into the car and he just disappears. Others just see him on the road and he disappears. So there's a lot of different versions and a lot of different like alternate facts, I guess, when it comes to this spirit. Ultimately, I would just chalk it up to being sort of similar to just phantom hitchhikers. It's a type of, I guess, subsection of ghosts that you can see a lot in like different highways, sort of like forest roads. I believe, I don't know if I mentioned it or not in any of these stories. I believe I sort of mentioned it once with Clinton Road. I know there is one up in Maine. I talked about it a little bit on a previous video that I might even mention about. There was a news report in Japan that had something similar where taxi drivers were reportedly picking up passengers that like disappeared mid-drive, like they just vanished within the car. So there's like a weird subsection of ghosts, and I believe there's a really famous one outside of Chicago, but I could be wrong. There's like a weird subsection of ghosts and spirits that pertain directly to highways and hitchhiking and just cars and all this weird stuff. Think episode 1. Gosh, how much of a nerd I am. Think episode 1 of Supernatural. For anyone who's listening, that subsection where the woman, you know, was on the side of the road and got people to take her home and stuff like that. Okay, so here's my, I guess, spin on this story and how I can kind of understand it if it is true. My big takeaway is the ending with the wife or the woman or whoever the significant other is. And because if you guys listened, I believe it was episode 4 when I talked about it. I talked about like personal experiences and just personal paranormal stuff that happened to me. And one of like the first things that ever really happened that kind of like kickstarted my weird wave of nonsense that was happening in middle school and high school was a time when I went home and a voice somehow on my phone came through just like crying and sobbing and like calling out and all this crazy stuff, to the point in which like 15-year-old me or whatever at the time was so spooked that I dropped and like kind of threw my phone on the ground, took my dog and sat outside. Like that's how scared I was at that moment, because I was alone and I didn't know what was going on. And to this day I don't have an explanation. I still have the phone, but I don't have an explanation for it. But if you want to listen to that story, I believe it's episode 4 or 5 of the podcast. It's under personal stories. It was interesting, so I don't know. I sympathize for this wife or whomever and her having to sit through a guy just laughing derangedly into her radio. Oh my god. Okay. I guess we'll take a short break right now. ad roll, I guess. I never really call this out. I guess I should. We'll be right back, and I'll finish up the ghost sections, and then I'll just talk about all the other stuff, and we'll finish this up, because I hope you guys are enjoying it. I am. We got a few more ghost stories, and then we're going to talk about some cryptids, so I'll be right back. Bye. Okay, and we are back. Last off, we just talked about the hitchhikers, I believe, and okay, so I'm not going to continue on with the ghost stories. I'm not going to ramble on because I want you guys to enjoy this. Again, there's a lot of versions pertaining to these stories involving the hitchhiker we talked about. There's like a weird subsect of all this stuff. So I would technically classify it as sort of like an urban legend, like a local legend, so to speak. There's also another story that kind of pertains within this field, or I guess classification of an urban legend. And this in particular is a phantom truck that is seen and reported either on or along the highway of the region. The truck itself is reported to be honking very loudly and just driving real crazy behind people and just causing panic and stress, and then just disappears. The thing is, though, the reason why I put this under urban legend is because some of the reports that I found pertaining to that, again, it's really quick, it's really short. The reason why I put it there is because in some of the spots that I looked up, they mention the story and they just mention it and they move on. However, there are a few sources and links and just things I found that are more like local based. In that one, it kind of fleshes out the idea that people have been asked about the story, like locals or people who live along or near the highways. They've been asked specifically, like, hey, have you heard about this weird truck that, like, it tries to get people off the road, goes crazy, and just disappears? And in a lot of cases, locals are like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never heard about this. Why are you mentioning this? This doesn't exist. So for some weird reason, it seems that a lot of the people that this affects are people that aren't from the spot, or I guess people who write about this story are not from the location, or they're making it up. So I'm filing this one under urban legend, the phantom truck, because there's just so many weird contradictions to the story. It's very vague. It matches a lot of other reports. We talked about in Clinton Road, there's a similar truck. And I believe there's a road in Delaware that has a very similar effect too. So it's like a thing. It's been on the internet. And it seems to be a very new story as well. That was another thing that was mentioned, is that a lot of the reports of the phantom truck are in much more recent years. It's like the newest thing out of all these weird spooks. But there is one last little paranormal thing that I want to talk about. This is actually within the town of Rehoboth. It is the one-room horror bin school. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Again, it's in Rehoboth, Massachusetts, and it is said to be haunted by its former inhabitants. So this school was built back in the 1840s, and the school was active up until around 1937, 36 or so. However, you can actually go and visit the school today on certain Sundays and special days during the summer, or if you can set up an appointment with them. So if you want to do that, it's Hornbin School. It is I guess I forget the word for it. It's schoolhouse. Like that's the term, I guess. It's like a really small shack out in the middle of nowhere. It's like a one-room schoolhouse type thing. If you can need a visualization in your mind. Over the years, despite this building's rather small size, as mentioned, visitors of the location have reported hearing voices, disembodied noises, and other paranormal activity both inside the little one-room building as well as outside and around the schoolhouse. Some people believe that the spirits have been awakened on this location, specifically for this location, due to the structure itself having been put through renovations back in 1968, I believe, during a celebration for the town overall. And they believe it stirred up spirits. I don't know. Again, this is one of those very vague things. I couldn't find too much on it. Again, it's a weird, very small spot in this overall location, but it's within the triangle, so I mentioned it. There's other spots, but those are for the most part the bigger paranormal things that I found. And again, overall, walking around, you're going to see weird things. Okay, so moving on to our next little topic and sort of category of weird things that are happening here. We are going to move into the cryptids, which is like my favorite thing when it comes to like the weird and bizarre. I love just like weird creatures that might exist but might not also exist, and just they're just weird and bizarre and like don't make sense. And it's like a mystery and an enigma wrapped up in itself. So first off, I have these like listed by name because I'm like, oh my god, I'm such a nerd. So like a lot of wooded areas in North America in particular, with very similar like strange reportings and sightings, again, like the stuff up in Vermont, a lot of places in California, stuff like that. There have been sightings within the triangle itself that are related to a shaggy ape-like creature that has been seen roaming around or within the swamp. So, it looks like the BridgeWater Triangle may or may not have Bigfoot. What I mean by may or may not is the fact that no one really specifies that this is a Bigfoot. The creature itself is reportedly quote-unquote a Bigfoot, but it's kind of vague. It might be like a weird variant, but no one really knows. It is, however, described to have a really horrendous odor, which a lot of the ape cryptid type things have, especially here in the North America. Like skunk ape, a lot of weird ape variants in like California and the what's it called? Pacific Northwest. But we're not there. We're over on the East Coast. So after one of these specific reports back in the 1970s, it ended with a lot of farm animals being killed. For the most part, the sightings within the triangle have been very like docile and peaceful sightings. There's no real reason to be like afraid of these things or whatever it is that people are seeing. It might just be one. But again, this particular report ended with like death in a way. So in response to this, the BridgeWater Triangle residents organized an expedition in order to search for this quote-unquote ape-like creature, which a lot of people also believe to be a bear, so completely reasonable. I believe we have black bears in this area. I haven't looked into Boston. Pretty sure black bears, because that's what we have down here. And ultimately, though, this like search and this big hunt or whatever, it came up empty. There was no traces ever found. There was no evidence relating to like a massive beast in the woods. So that was back in the 70s though. There are still like speckles of things reported here and there. But for the most part, Bigfoot's not a major component of this, despite how heavily wooded and just sort of like rugged the area can be. So it's surprising in the sense that like, most wooded areas have these reports, and they do, but it's not like the prominent thing that people see, which I find interesting. It's a little like new spin to things. Now, one thing that has been spotted a few times, not too many, but a few times, is what people believe to be the Thunderbird. So, if anyone who does not know what this is, let me just talk a little bit about the reports. The creature that has been reported in the region, both within and sort of around the swampland itself, is just weird, and people have no idea what it is. So some people report that they have seen a giant, like dark black, like pterodactyl-like creature with a wingspan stretching anywhere from 8 to 12 feet in length. One sighting in particular really, really stands out like across all the others. So back in 1971, Police Sergeant Thomas Downey was driving near Bird Hill in Easton, Massachusetts. Again, it's very ironic that he's like, this is like the first major report, it's on Bird Hill, where he claims to have spotted what he believes to be a 6-foot tall creature with a wingspan nearly double its height, so 12 feet. I don't know how many meters. I could do the math. I believe. Whatever. I'm in America. I'm sorry. So he watched as the bird or whatever it was flew off, and then later reported it back to the Easton police office and police district, who, funny enough, laughed him off and continued to like ridicule him in a sense. But this guy stood strong and stood firm on what he saw. Like, he believes that this is what he saw. And to be perfectly fair, This dude's a sergeant. Like, why is the whole police station laughing at this guy? Like, I get it, like, it's a weird sighting, but this dude's pretty high up there for the most part. So that was like the biggest thing, because, you know, a law enforcement officer is reporting seeing this like weird 6-foot tall creature that's flying around. Now, some say that this large creature, again, as we mentioned in the beginning, is that of the mythical Thunderbird, a legendary giant condor-looking like sort of eagle hawk bird that has really like magical powers and is within a lot of Native American mythologies here in North America. For the most part, I don't know what the Thunderbird is supposed to look like because there are so many weird variants. So most people, when they see like a big bird-like creature in the skies in, especially again, North America, 9 times out of 10 people are going to be like, oh my gosh, it's a Thunderbird. So again, bear with me, especially up here in the East Coast. That's like a very prominent, I guess, myth and cryptid here. Again, we're in Boston, or we're near Boston. We're in Massachusetts. And a lot of that region, I guess even down to like, I guess even as far down as Florida and as far north as into Canada, you're going to have these stories and these reports and these legends. The Thunderbird, for me, I personally believe it's sort of like a cop-out. I completely understand, like, it's reasonable. It's like a local legend. It makes sense. It fits the bill. But to me, like, it's just these things are so vague in their descriptions, making it immediately be a Thunderbird, a creature who is said to have these magical powers and bring storms with its like wing flaps and all this crazy stuff, and just be like a imposing figure of nature. Having it linked to just like weird black bird shaped sightings, it just seems so vague to me. Again, I think the whole Thunderbird excuse is a cop-out. No one has really have any solid claim supporting it being a Thunderbird. They're just seeing a very, again, pterodactyl-like figure, maybe a condor. It's big. I don't think there's any massive birds over here, besides like eagles and hawks. For the most part, I think vultures and stuff are over west. I don't know. It could be like turkey vulture, but do this fly? I don't know. I'm rambling on. I'm trying to explain things that don't really have an explanation. So, moving on. Okay, so the next, I guess the sort of last weird cryptid thing that we're going to talk about, and I believe we sort of mentioned something similar back in Clinton Road. I don't know. The name just sounds so familiar. Is the Pukwudgie. Yeah, Pukwudgie. Okay, so within the triangle, above all these weird sightings of creatures and stuff, there is one that's very, very up there, and that is the very strange sightings of what people claim to be Pukwudgies. So the word stems from Delaware and Wampanoag tribes. I believe both sort of have similar things. That's actually, now that I think about it, that might be sort of why this sounds familiar, because the Delawares were sort of near where I am. So their tribe kind of reached down here. So that makes sense they might have similar stuff. So the meaning of the word Pukwudgie means the little wild men of the forest. I could be wrong, but that's what I found. And that's what the translation apparently roughly is. The creatures were a part of Native American legends and traditions, and are described to be dwarf or troll-like humanoids that are very, very short. They sported gray skin and had very large very large ears, fingers, and noses. Just weird. So they're kind of like little goblin things that are running around. I think sort of like Gremlin, but just with like weird spider fingers and a little bit taller. Actually, no, Gremlins would be a good description. Just extend their noses out. These small beings have all sorts of magical powers, as most, native or I guess ancient creatures do. They have weird powers and agilities and traits associated to them, including behaviors such as disappearing and sort of turning invisible, as well as shape-shifting, because every forest creature has to have that thing. I don't know why they all do. I don't know. I think shape-shifting is such a weird thing that everything has. Some say that these creatures possess poison arrows, and they are said to be able to start fires within the woods. So they're sort of primitive, but sort of tribal in a way. If you visit the location, be sure to watch your back, because this is weird, according to legend and regional lore, these small beings are known to shove people off of the Acid Ridge. The thing we talked about before within the Freetown State Forest, and are said to be the reason why people are disappearing or getting lost, or just mysteriously dying in general in the woods. So above all this weird stuff, especially on the ridge, above the like impending feeling of having to throw yourself off a cliff, if you somehow overpower that feeling, little gremlin things might run up and just kick you off. like what is happening? Why? Like, these things are just so weird. So you have to be careful. Again, buddy system up in BridgeWater Triangle. These things will either, I guess, take you somewhere, either kill you outright, or just sort of make it seem like a weird, mysterious, or natural death in the woods. I think essentially it just sort of stems back to like people getting lost in the woods and just dying from the elements. There are a lot of reports of children going missing in the region, and a lot turn up, granted. But you know, it's that whole like just story and just like mystery and just sort of looming fear that we have when it comes to like a daunting force of nature, such as like a giant wood and like swampland. So it makes sense that people would blame that sort of things on like a weird, mysterious, unseen creature in the area. Makes sense. But I want to move on to another section, one that is one of my more favorites too. Cryptids are still up there, my number one. But moving on, we're going to have UFOs and weird, like sort of extraterrestrial, just general UFO sightings that the region itself has. So the area, again, is also just a major hotspot for UFO sightings. The first recorded sighting of events that occurred in the BridgeWater Triangle, or the area at least, was back in 1760. Can't read a 7. And this happened after a strange and unidentifiable noise began to echo throughout the morning sky. So this led a lot of citizens to look out towards the sky and spot a very strange object hovering overhead. And that sort of thing kind of extends on today. A lot of people report hearing these like weird sounds or like booms and noises in the sky that like have nothing that is attributed to them, like they don't know where it's coming from. So it goes that far back in the 1700s. So oh gosh. One of the next major reportings was in 1968, so moving way up in time. 5 people claimed that they had witnessed a strange ball of light hovering among the trees in the wooded regions surrounding Rehoboth, which is again a town that is the point of one of the triangles. This is the list, so bear with me. In 1976, 2 UFOs had been sighted landing along Route 44 near Trunton. I don't know where that is. But they've been seen landing there for people in the region. I guess it's another town. In 1994, the BridgeWater Law Enforcement Office reported seeing a oh my god. Oh, it's an officer. Oh my gosh. I can't read this one sentence. A BridgeWater law enforcement officer reported seeing a triangular-shaped craft with red and white lights. And then in the summer of 1999, a fast-moving UFO has been accompanied by, again, the very loud, weird noise in the sky. And that was reported over Lake Nepenickel, I believe it's pronounced. Nepeneket. Nippeneket. Oh my gosh. I didn't pronunciate that one, so that's up in the air. You have free roam to criticize that one. So moving on, there's one like more particular stories. In July 3rd of 1972, so going back a few years, people in the South Shore area of Massachusetts, so sort of near where the triangle is, looked up into the night sky and spotted a strange sight. A large triangular shape has sort of looking like a baseball diamond I don't know why they said triangular. It's a diamond shape. It was reported to be sort of translucent by a lot of people that saw this, so you can kind of see through it, kind of not. I guess in a way, sort of like a cloaking mechanism, if that makes sense, if you need a reference. And the local naval base received numerous calls inquiring about the object. To this day, no one has any answer for what it was, and the object was reportedly visible for over half an hour. Like, it's up there for a while, and at least 26 different individuals had confirmed seeing it on that night. So it's not a small thing. Again, this was seen in like an overall region, not a specific sighting. So a lot of people called in about this, and no one knows what it was. And then next up, we have along with all the weird sightings that people saw involving UFOs and just weird craft-like things, people within and around the triangle have also begun seeing bright spheres of fire up in the night sky, with some reportedly being so bright that it lights up the entire town. Like, at nighttime, it just blink, and it's like sun. Like, it's just a blinding brightness. Multiple witnesses have reported spotting these sort of balls of fire dating back in 2011, with just over 20 separate reports being filed in by local residents on that particular incident. So again, this isn't like a sort of like isolated reports. Like, these are being prominently reported on. Like, people are calling in, people are asking why this is happening. People of the region are seeing this stuff. I don't know how much of it's true, but it's getting out there. So that's the end for the UFO section, unfortunately. I wish there were more. There are sort of more, but they're all kind of, again, vague. They're kind of typical, like, really short reports. A lot of those were the bigger ones. But moving on, we have a sort of the weird category that I'm calling, like, other. They're, like, less extreme, and they have more, like, probable explanations, and I guess sort of like they fall under true crime in a lot of sense. They have a lot of like real life application to them, so I just kind of made them, their own little category. So first off, a thing that could potentially be in the cryptid section, and I'm sure people are wondering if they know up at the spot, the mysteriously monstrous sized snakes that are reported in the area. So these snakes have also been known to call the triangle their home. And these sightings of these strange reptiles, these slithering snakes, have been reported on by the police officers back even in like 1970. So these particular police officers in the 70s reported on this one to the Brookton newspaper, and is quoted as saying the following at that time. Nothing surprises us anymore. Last week, a motorist ran over an 8-foot boa constrictor. We still have not learned where it had come from. So people just don't know where it is. Weird snakes keep being reported in the region. Again, this is the Northeast, so we do technically have different types of snake species. It is a little colder up there, but they're still here. I mean, here in PA, we even have like rattlesnake variants. So we have things up here, but nothing that big. We don't have a lot of constrictors. We don't have like massive, like meter-long snakes that are like these ones being reported in the triangle. So dating even further back in the 70s, there is, however, back in 1939, another report. The Civilian Conservation Corps, along with several of its workers, were completing a project on the King Philip Street, which is located sort of near the edge of the Hockomock Swamp. So these workers, while they're doing their job, they're working on this road, reported seeing a huge snake as large as the length of a stovepipe. I don't know what a stovepipe really is. I'm assuming, since this is back in the 40s, or I guess about to be 40s, if you can visualize this in any sense, the stove piping that leads up and out to get rid of the exhaust is what I'm assuming they're talking about. So I'm gonna guesstimate here anywhere between like 6 and 9 feet ish. So think about that. So these workers reported seeing that snake, And this snake is said to just it just sat there, and it was all coiled up, and it just kind of ignored them. It was like, I don't care, you guys are nothing to me. Before it raised up its head and just sort of slithered off into the swamp and just like was gone. If you aren't familiar with like boa constrictors and other snake-like species down in like the Amazon and stuff like that, snakes are decent swimmers for the most part. So being in a swampland, it's just sort of at home. And with this legend of just weird snakes and monstrous snakes, there is a weird correlation to the fact that a lot of these claims since this point, since like the one in 1939, at least one snake, or at least just one report, has at least come forward once every year. Like every year there's something that's happening with the snake. I don't know how much credibility this is. Obviously, I did not go back through at least 100 years worth of like research for every single year, so I'm gonna have to just take this with a grain of salt. But with this legend, apparently, like snakes just keep coming out of nowhere. No one knows why. No one knows where they're coming from. Obviously, it might be someone's pet. It might be an escaped animal. It happens. It's weird that it keeps happening, but it happens. And if I guess they breed out in the wild, even more are gonna keep popping up. So moving on with the weird, like possibly real explanations, because again, like snakes could be real. We have some of the more like true crimey type stuff that happens here. And this is short, but it happened, I guess. So in the forest within the triangle, there has been known to be a lot of sites involving various cult activity of the region. Again, we mentioned that ridge at one point. A lot of people report seeing like Satanists and cult stuff up there. The woods itself are just spooky, and it's going to attract that sort of stuff. So this cult activity has been said to include a lot of animal sacrifices and ritual murders committed by supposed Satanists. So near Freetown and Fall River in the 1990s, police discovered mutilated animals that are believed to be the work of one of these cults. So it dates back a few decades at this point. People have been using the area for weird stuff for years now. Again, it's not a surprise. It all seems to have been killed in some sort of like ritual manner. Again, these animal sacrifices, and it has been suggested that it is the work of, again, satanic cults. The density of the forest, again, this is a heavily swampland type area, has also been reported apparently to be a pretty good dumping ground for killers. I'm not going to put so much credence into this because, again, I didn't look into like every police report possible. I don't want to like dive too far into like actual death stuff because I know it upsets some people. But there are supposedly some murders on top of these satanic rituals that take place. And the forest is just such a good spot to dump a body that people use it. Or just like they get rid of other stuff. A lot of like, I guess, illegal things happen there. Again, also in like the vein of true crimey type things. Again, people report a lot of children going missing in the area. Whether or not this has anything to do with, actual people, that's up in the air. A lot of these cases, again, the kids do get found. There are some weird, mysterious cues when it comes to this, as some reports, I believe there's one where a boy went missing and like a week went by. They could not find him, and then all of a sudden he's just found. Like he's perfectly fine, no scrapes, no bruises, nothing. He's like, his clothes are clean, like he's just fine. And he just said like, I was just in the woods. I was just walking around the woods, like he was just perfectly fine, nothing happened, and he just came back like that, nothing happened. So weird stuff like that happens. Back a few years, I believe, again, I don't know how much credence I'm going to give this because I didn't write it down, but apparently people claim that potentially a serial killer may have gone through the area at one point, as there were 2 young female victims that were discovered in the woods with certain organs and stuff removed. So people think, again, it might be like a satanic ritual. However, these 2 individuals were laid on top of each other, the bodies, and it has some relation to other like killings and deaths that sort of stretched up the East Coast a little bit. But the article that I was looking into and the report that those came from, again, it's just so vague. Like, I wish there was more information on there. I couldn't find that again. So I'm just mentioning it. I don't know how much truth there is to it. For the most part, even within that article, it doesn't seem to say that there is like, this is a serial killer's stomping ground. It just says that like maybe someone went through at that point. But again, you know, might be the cults that people say are in the area. It's just crazy nonsense. We ended on like a dark note. I'm sorry for that. But yeah, for the most part, that's most of the weird stuff that you get with the BridgeWater Triangle. For the most part, those are like the major stories. Those are the major locations, the weird ghost stuff that are happening, and the monsters and weird things. But what is the BridgeWater Triangle? So this is all I have for like the notes and everything. So I'm just going to be talking freehand here. But when it comes to the BridgeWater Triangle, and again, if you need a point of reference, the Bermuda Triangle is a great point. The Dragon's Triangle near Japan. What people believe this spot to be, and again, I don't know this 100% for truth. Don't criticize me, I'm not an expert. A lot of people believe these sort of locations should just sort of be like a vortex of just weirdness. Think of Gravity Falls, for instance. Their explanation for why so many things were happening in that location is, as I quote, that like it drawed everything to it. It was just like a vortex and just like major hub, everything weird. And this is sort of how BridgeWater Triangle is and all the other triangles out in the world. They're just sort of like a weird hodgepodge of everything, and everything there is fueling everything else, and also in this case like drawing in like satanic worship, weird people. Like, it just keeps adding and adding and adding. You just get this whirlpool effect of just bizarre craziness that keeps adding upon itself. Now, some people think that a lot of these locations have to do with, you know, maybe like a event that happened in the past, especially with the BridgeWater Triangle. Some people claim that it may have been a cursed location, that some connection to the Wampanoag tribe created some sort of like native curse. There's not a whole lot of evidence supporting that, but that, you know, it's an explanation. Some people say that, you know, these locations across the globe have relation to weird like electromagnetic currencies and relations to different latitude and longitudes. And because they're on these like fault lines and stuff, and these like latitude lines, that because they're there, they have this weird energy vortex. There's a lot of weird stuff. More rational explanation may be the fact that people in the local area just compiled so many weird sightings that over time it just added up, and just people who wanted to visit the location just kept adding to those stories themselves, and other weird people started reporting on it, like me, which is completely plausible too. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of these things I think could easily be chalked up to just being weird reports and sightings, or being a misinterpretation of other things. But the idea that I have with these specific locations, and the reason why I like it so much, and the reason why I wanted to talk about BridgeWater Triangle, is the fact that like there are just so many things and just so many reports of different people, different groups, people from the area, people visiting the area, and there's just so much like history and just rich things to just dive in, and just you're always finding something new. Like, it's just awesome. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to technically add it into this episode, because it's kind of going longer than I thought. I guess I can add it in. So I'm going to technically end this right now. I'm going to keep recording after this session. But off the note that I just mentioned, the fact that like people who visit the location and are from the location have their own stories, I'm going to be reading some of those stories, because again, I did report on this location on my YouTube channel like way back. I published it in February of 2016, so this was like an early episode for me. It's like 10 minutes long, so you guys are getting a lot more than that video ever got. But since then, people have been commenting and messaging and leaving their own stories and stuff, so I want to talk about a few of them. I don't know how great any of these stories will be, or how much credit I'm going to give these people, because again, these are just people on the internet. I don't know any of them in particular, so bear with me. And if you are a listener from that spot, or if you're eventually going to listen to this again on YouTube, I doubt you'll get through like an hour and 20 minutes at this point. But if you do, thank you for the foremost. But if you find your own story in here, thank you for posting it. So without further ado, I'm going to, again, turn this off real quick, end it, and then I'm going to come back and re-record for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoy, and hold tight. We'll listen to some personal and listener story type stuff. Okie doke, so we are back. This is like the third little, I guess, section. First we talked about the backstory and some ghosts, and then we talked about the weird stuff that happened there. And towards the end of that little recording, I mentioned that I'm coming back and I'm going to read through some of the comments and messages that I got in relation to the BridgeWater video that I made back in 2016. I like this whole new podcast format, and I really like the fact that I can go back into these like archive stuff that I have and draw inspiration from some of the reports that you guys gave me. So first and foremost, about 80% of these comments are all people telling me how to pronounce Dighton Rock, which I believe I pronounced Digton Rock back then. So I hope I have corrected myself at that point. But at this point, I'm not going off of a script or anything. I'm going to free flow it. So bear with me, but I'm going to talk about some of the comments that people have. So a lot of these are from a few years ago. Some of these are from more recent. So I'm just going to go through a few and just talk about the more interesting ones that I have. Okay. So Hiker Dave Northeast Bigfoot commented a year ago saying, I live right smack dab in the middle of the BridgeWater Triangle in Truton. Okay, so Truton is a town. We mentioned that earlier when did we mention that? We mentioned that at some point. So that's in the middle of the triangle. I recently explored the swamp area. Again, this is a year ago. Just along the power lines, parking off of the road on Route 138. Follow the power lines heading west. I came across a dirt access road that led directly into the swamp. I was alone and am aware of the history of the area. I was really uncomfortable for some reason, and I felt that I should leave. I did just that and returned a few days later with some friends. We saw a strange tree structure, we heard noises, and all of us felt like that we were being followed or watched at the very least. On our way back out of the swamp, we were overcome with an overwhelming feeling that we were being herded. Okay, he wrote that wrong. That we were being herded or escorted from the area by an unseen force. Maybe just psychological, really creepy place nonetheless. I do plan on returning in the fall to explore further into the woods when there is more comfortable weather. Okay, so I mean, at this point, he probably has already done it. Again, it's a year ago at this point. But yeah, I actually haven't sat through and read every single one of these. I probably won't. Okay, I'm just scrolling through it while I'm reading this. I live in Rehoboth, West Point of the Triangle, and I have to say it is creepy as blank. LOL. I try to keep this PG as much as I can. LOL, whenever I drive by one of these cemeteries, I always get chills. Jimmy Drury writes, I lived in Boston all my life and only recently heard about the Triangle, but friends of mine live inside of it, and I honestly was blown away by the stories they've told me. Many people keep what they say to themselves for fear of ridicule. My friend's niece was actually one of the okay. This is sad, but my friend's niece was actually one of the victims of the serial killer or alleged serial killer found, Ashley Maylett. I've heard about the Dighton Rock and about the huge snakes that were seen. Oh my god, you pronounced it Dighton. Check out the name Robin Murphy. She was 17 years old, was the leader of a devil-worshipping cult that was killing people. My friend just saw this video I posted on Facebook. I told him and told me he saw the werewolf dog and how it was huge and fast, all muscles, about 175 to 200 pounds. I didn't know there was a werewolf dog. Where were all these in my research? Again, I mean, these might just be weird things. Okay. He told me that he just kept it to himself, and then when he saw your video, he bugged out. I'm going down to the Hockomock Swamp this weekend. I've lived there all my life, and it's crazy that I've never heard of it until a few months ago. It's not that far a drive from me. Oh, wow. Okay, so great. This might give some credibility to the whole serial killer claim. I'm just gonna hold on. I'm gonna copy and paste and look that up. Serial. Okay, wait, hold on. This is actually some recent stuff that popped up when I googled the name. Wait, how long ago did this person? This person wrote 3 years ago. Okay, hold on. I live there with my parents. They won't let me go into the forest or near the ledge or anything. Besides, one of the churches in the woods have behind one of the churches in the woods, there has been satanic sacrifices. It's terrifying living here sometimes. There are some real creepy things that happen. Oh, wow. Jesus. So apparently, I just looked it up. I just Google searching the name Ashley Millette. So hold on one second. So I actually just pulled up an article from November 28th, 2018. It was written unsolved using genealogy to unlock a series of murders, rapes in Brighton. There are 5 victims, and investigators believe that there could be more. Oh my god, was there actually a serial killer in their area? Oh wow, okay, so that might actually prove some serial killerness of the area. Oh wow. So I guess that claim from that one site that I couldn't find any other facts on has some truth to it. All right. I mean, it's sad, but I'm sorry. It's just baffling to me, the fact that, oh my god, this might actually be a thing. And the cult stuff is just crazy too. Okay, so Rizeka writes, he again criticizes the fact that I pronounced the rock wrong. He says, I live in Freetown, and I walk to the state forest almost every day. I've never seen anything weird, but my mom gets scared when I walk in there at the night. She is paranoid that something and everything is out there. Oh, jeez. My mom would be definitely terrified. She was scared of me going into the woods here out in the suburbs of Philly, and our woods are not that bad. Okay, I'm trying to find actual stories. Some people are just saying creepy, triangle of the strange. Oh my god, so many of these are just it's pronounced this. It's I get it, but please stop. Okay, John Lampfer wrote a year ago, I lived close to Bridgewater and spent a lot of time there going to school. I always felt something strange about the area, but could never put my finger on it. I do believe there is some sort of spirit influence over the college. I don't know what college he went to. He doesn't say. It seems some of the buildings may have been haunted. Okay. I don't know what college he's talking about or what school he's talking about, but I guess he was there. I mean, again, this is a big area, so there are probably schools there, so I'm just being ignorant. Okay, more stories. I thought there was more stories here. Okay, Stevie Grant wrote a year ago, Freetown Fall River entrance. It's creepy. I live near there. Been a few times. Used to chill on the ledge and people profile rock as a kid. ... And place is swampy rural in the creepy place. All caps. I comment, and then he goes back to normal typing. I've been to ledge 20, 30 times. So he's talking about the I forget the name. The ledge where people potentially kill themselves. The Freetown River is creepy and profile rock. Okay, it's just saying what he's been to. Some guy ridiculing me for calling it a triangle. I don't remember this one. Even though I didn't coin that term. Okay. Barry Broiler 1 year ago wrote, I live in the Bridgewater Triangle, and I have never seen anything weird, but I didn't even know it was supposed to be haunted until I saw a show on the Discovery/History Channel. Can't remember which one. The stone. Okay, now he's talking about the Dying Rock. The stone has been moved to a safer place, so it can't be destroyed. So you can't come and see it there. There are seals in the state, but strange. But Boston. Oh, he's just talking about I don't know. It's weird. People don't really punctuate very well. Wow. Okay. So for the most part, that's it. A lot of people are just saying creepy, pronounced wrong. Triangle is strange, creepy. I can clearly see the image. Blah blah blah. I live there. I live near here. I live near. Okay. People, I guess I mentioned seals or sea lions at one point because a lot of comments are mentioning that like seals live in Massachusetts. I don't know why people are bringing this up because I from what I can remember, I'm like, this is a landlocked spot, like the triangle itself. So I don't know why people are like, there's seals there. I'm like, they're probably near Boston. They're not near the triangle. I don't know. I thought there were more stories here than I actually mentioned. Stephanie Hathaway wrote, I live there with my parents. I live there and my parents won't let me go to the forest or near the ledge or anything. Oh, she's the one who wrote about the sacrifice behind a church. Bridgewater Triangle represent, not the crimes, of course. I live in the Bridgewater Triangle. Haha, wrote Stephanie Hathaway. Wait, she wrote again? Oh, okay, she wrote somewhere else. Morgan Frey 999. I lived in the area and just need to say that it's always been creepy no matter where you are. Dude, it's like you throw a rock in any direction and oh look, a ghost. Cindy W.H. Witter wrote, I lived east of Freetown for 10 years, not far from the forest, and agree all of the creepy things that happened there, especially in relations to the swamp within Bridgewater. I remember Channel 4 WBZ doing a special on the triangle back in the late 70s, early 80s, and the Norton cop was interviewed already, although his identity was kept hidden. He since appeared in specials where he wasn't hidden, and the time of the first interview, the incident had not happened to him. A friend of mine, I don't know what she's talking about. The cop with the bird. I don't know why I'm like, what's going on? Cindy continues to write, a friend of mine claims to have seen a Bigfoot in the forest when he and his cousin were camping there to see if they could witness anything. He wasn't one to make up stories and was really shaken badly telling me about it and swore me to secrecy. Sorry to your cousin or your friend. It's now public knowledge. Never mind. Sorry. He passed away, unfortunately, but I've never and won't reveal who he. Okay, well, yeah, she won't reveal who he is. Cool. But you didn't keep your secret though, Cindy. The forest has seen a lot of bad things happen there. As we mentioned, there was a war that happened there. But I believe there's something to the reports that people have made. It's just easier for the public to dismiss these until they witness something for themselves. The triangle itself is large. If anyone is going to investigate it on their own, I would suggest starting in the Hockomock Swamp within Bridgewater. Cindy continues on by saying, the Norton cop who said something huge and silent flew over his patrol car while he was on Route 123. He said on the WBZ special years ago, he only saw the shadow, but it really frightened him. It really frightened him. That would freak me out too if I were to see it. Also, if I don't know anything about it at the time, I'd love to see one though. Oh, good for you, Cindy. I would not. Peter wrote, I'm looking to make a documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle. I am seeking people to interview as well on the location in which their experiences happened. If anyone needs to help, contact me directly through YouTube. He put a space there. Is that it? I think that's it. I'm trying to like go through all the comments of the comments. So hold on, bear with me for a moment. But I think for the most part, that's it. A lot of weird stuff. Some more clarification when it comes to the man, the officer who reported seeing the weird sight. Okay, there's one more. I'll read this last one. Rizeka, the guy who wrote that his mom would not let him into the woods. I did comment back on it, and he commented again saying, honestly, to me at least, it's not too exciting for the folklore, more for the nature. I notice something new about the trees almost every day I walk by. However, you can camp at the forest, though. I'm thinking of going this summer. Okay, so he does agree that like there's a weird sense there, but he's kind of rambles on again. I think that's it. I think for the most part, that's all I really got. People asking about the website. Yeah, by the way, the website in relation to this is down. There was like a BridgeWater Triangle website specific for it. It's gone, I guess, at this point. But yeah, so I think for the most part, that's it. Those were some of the stories and like reports that people who I guess wanted to comment on it did, and they were interesting and they gave some more clarification. There was apparently a serial killer in the area. If you look it up, there's actually recent news on it, so I don't know if I'll do a follow-up or not. That's a little too true crimey for me for this channel, God, I got used to this being a podcast. For this podcast, and I don't know. I mean, it gave some more reports on Bigfoot potentially being a thing there. We talked about a little more details with the bird sighting with the sergeant who reported it back to his precinct, and some more specifications on some of the satanic rituals. So apparently those happen, and people in the area are fearful at night. So I guess cultists do like to hang out in that location. That sucks. I don't know why. I guess the whole spiritual vortex thing they have there is a draw for them. I mean, even if I am a cultist, I'm not going out in the middle of the woods at night to do random stuff. I'm going to get lost. I'll do it in my basement or whatever. But yeah, so for the most part, I think that's it. That's all I really have for you guys. I saved that for the end because I thought it'd be a little fun thing. I didn't pre-prep that one at all. So I was reading that live with you guys. But if you have your own little stories and stuff, if you are a resident of the area and you want to talk about your own experiences, I would love to hear it. As always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Realm of Unknown, or you can email me those stories at realmofunknown@gmail.com. And you can just find me anywhere when it comes to podcasts. I'm pretty much on any platform. I've got like 2 episodes on SoundCloud too. It's crazy. But for the most part, you can find me on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all that good stuff. And I hope to hear you guys from back for all your stories soon. I'm going to be posting a few episodes back to back. Some not as research heavy, some are. For the most part, I want to talk about more like personal stuff. Not my personal stuff, but more like personal stories and reports, as well as my own little insight onto them. I just pump out episodes because I feel so bad for like having these gaps in recording. It's been hard to really get a session in there. And at this point, this episode's about an hour and 40 minutes long. So you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, email me your stuff, Realm of Unknown for anything and everything. And I hope you guys enjoyed this extra journey into the Realm of Unknown. I hope you guys can join us in our next little adventure. Remember to stay spooky.